There is a specific kind of quiet panic that happens when the thing you rely on, the thing that is just supposed to be there, the thing that feels like the furniture of your life, suddenly threatens to get up and walk out the door. We are used to thinking about the economy in terms of abstract numbers. We look at the stock market ticker tape. We look at the unemployment rate. We look at inflation percentages that get read out by people in suits on cable news. But the real economy, the one that you and I actually live in, is measured in much more tangible things. It is measured in the gallon of milk. It is measured in the cost of a new set of tires. It is measured in the checkout line at the place where, statistically speaking, more Americans buy their groceries than anywhere else on earth. That place, of course, is Walmart. And for decades, the deal with Walmart has been very simple. It has been an implicit contract between the biggest retailer in the world and the American consumer. The deal was this. They build the massive logistical empire. They squeeze the supply chain until it screams. They scour the globe for the cheapest possible manufacturing. And in exchange, you get the lowest possible price. You get the rollback. You get the predictability. You get the sense that no matter what else is happening in the world, the prices at the big box store are going to stay relatively flat. That was the deal. That was the era of globalization that defined the late 20th and early 21st centuries. But what happens when that deal is broken? Not because shoppers stopped showing up, and not because the company forgot how to do logistics, but because the government changed the rules of the game so fundamentally that the math no longer works. We're looking at a headline right now that feels like a glitch in the simulation. We are looking at a story that suggests the biggest employer in the United States, the company that is essentially synonymous with the American retail landscape, is making a strategic decision to pivot away from the United States. Walmart ditching the U.S. sounds like a contradiction in terms. It sounds like saying the ocean is ditching the water. But if you look at what is actually happening in the policy world, if you look at the decisions being made in the White House and how those decisions ripple out to the loading docks and the distribution centers, this is not just a scare story. This is the logical economic consequence of a very specific political choice. We are talking about tariffs. We are talking about the new aggressive protectionist policies from the Trump administration. And we are talking about the collision between a political ideology that says we can tax our way to prosperity and the economic reality of a company that relies on moving goods across borders to keep prices down. When you hear that Walmart is ditching the U.S., what we are really talking about is a fundamental restructuring of how they do business, because the cost of serving the American market under these new tariffs has become unsustainable for their business model. To understand why this is happening right now, you have to peel back the layers of what a tariff actually is. There is a lot of rhetoric out there. There is a lot of tough talk about making other countries pay, about bringing jobs back, about punishing foreign competitors. And that sounds great on a bumper sticker. It sounds strong. But in the cold, hard light of a corporate boardroom, a tariff is just a tax. It is a tax that is paid at the border, not by the country sending the goods, but by the company bringing them in. So when the administration announces a sweeping new round of tariffs, they are effectively handing a massive tax bill to companies like Walmart. And Walmart operates on razor-thin margins. They make their money on volume. They do not have a massive cushion to just absorb a 20 or 60% increase in the cost of the goods sitting on their shelves. So they have a choice. They can pass that cost on to you, which destroys their entire brand promise of low prices, or they can look at the map of the world and say maybe the American market with these new artificial costs is no longer the best place to focus our growth. Maybe we need to shift our supply chains, shift our inventory, and shift our focus to markets where the government isn't actively making it more expensive to sell a toaster or a t-shirt. This is the story that is getting buried under the political noise. We are so focused on the horse race of who is up and who is down in Washington that we miss the tectonic shift happening in the real economy. If Walmart is signaling a retreat from the U.S. market or a massive reduction in its U.S. footprint or a shift in its supply chain that effectively cuts out the American consumer from the best prices, that is a blinking red light for the entire economy. It suggests that the policy of isolationism, the policy of tearing up trade deals and slapping taxes on imports, is hitting a breaking point. And the scary part is not just that it is happening. The scary part is that this was predicted. economists, supply chain experts, and even some of the retail giants themselves warned that if you go down this road of trade wars, the first casualty is going to be the American consumer's wallet, and the second casualty is going to be the availability of goods. Think about the sheer scale of what Walmart moves. We are talking about a company that has a GDP bigger than many actual countries. They are the ultimate bellwether. If they are sneezing, the economy has the flu. If they are saying that the U.S. market is becoming too toxic, too expensive, or too difficult to navigate because of these tariffs, that is not just a business story. That is a story about the viability of the American standard of living. It is a story about what happens when you prioritize political posturing over economic mechanics. And we need to get into the details of this. We need to look at exactly which tariffs triggered this. We need to look at what ditching the U.S. actually looks like in practice. Does it mean store closures? Does it mean empty shelves? Does it mean prices doubling overnight? And we need to understand how we got to a place where the American government and the American economy seem to be at war with each other. This isn't just about one store. This is about whether the economic system we have built over the last 40 years is being dismantled brick by brick, and what that means for your grocery bill next Tuesday. Because when the dust settles, it is not the politicians who pay the price. It is the person standing at the register watching the total go up and up, wondering what happened to the deal we thought we had. To understand the gravity of this moment, we have to look at the architecture of the machine itself. We have to go back to Bentonville, Arkansas, and look at what Sam Walton actually built. We tend to think of Walmart as a place where we go to buy things, but economically speaking, Walmart is an import engine. It is a massive vacuum cleaner that sucks up goods from manufacturing hubs around the world, primarily Asia, and deposits them in American living rooms. For 40 years, the economic logic of this country was built on a specific trade-off. We allowed our domestic manufacturing base to atrophy. We watched factories close in Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania. We watched those jobs go overseas. And the political class, Democrats and Republicans alike, told us that this was the natural order of things. They told us that while we might lose the factory jobs, we would gain something else: access to an endless river of incredibly cheap goods. You might not make the microwave anymore, but you can buy a microwave for $40. That was the trade-off. That was the globalization bargain. And Walmart was the physical embodiment of that bargain. They perfected the logistics of moving a shipping container from Shenzhen to Long Beach to a distribution center in Kansas faster and cheaper than anyone else in history. But now that machinery is grinding gears, and it is not because the ship stopped running. It is because the political consensus that allowed that machine to operate has been set on fire. When the Trump administration began its first trade war, it was a skirmish. It was steel and aluminum. It was a few specific categories. It was disruptive, sure, but it was manageable for a giant like Walmart. They could hedge, they could stockpile, they could squeeze their suppliers a little harder. But what we are seeing now, what is driving this headline about Walmart ditching the U.S., is a total escalation of hostilities. We are talking about universal tariffs. We are talking about a policy that views every incoming ship not as a delivery of goods, but as an economic invasion that needs to be repelled. And when you institute a blanket tariff, whether it is 10%, 20%, or 60% on specific countries, you are effectively detonating the foundation of the Walmart business model. Think about the math of a discount retailer. This is the boring part that explains everything. Walmart does not make a lot of profit on each item. If you buy a $5 t-shirt, they might make pennies on that transaction. Their power comes from selling 1 billion t-shirts. Now imagine the government steps in and says that t-shirt now costs the importer, Walmart, an extra $1 in tax. $1. It doesn't sound like much, but if the profit margin on that shirt was only 50 cents to begin with, the business model just evaporated. You are now losing money on every single shirt you sell. So what do? You cannot simply absorb the cost. You cannot just tell shareholders, sorry, we aren't making money this year. You have two options. Option A, you raise the price of the t-shirt to $7. But if you do that, your customers, who are often living paycheck to paycheck, stop buying the t-shirt. They can't afford it. Option B, you stop trying to sell t-shirts in America. You look at the map and say, where else can we do business? And this is where the ditching comes in. This is the part that should send a shiver down the spine of anyone who cares about the American economy. Walmart is looking at the United States, its home, its birthplace, its biggest market, and it is seeing a hostile environment, not because of taxes on profits, but because of taxes on inventory.